committee members were appointed by the resolution number 0239, 2010, on September 15, 2010. Are there any conflict of interest to be declared by any committee member? No? Mr. Chung? No? Nothing for myself? No? No. We have 5 full members attendance, the quorum is complete. The application will be considered by the committee. Each committee member will have an opportunity to comment or ask questions of either the applicant or the respondent. The applicants and the respondent will be invited to make comments. During the course of discussion, the committee may seek legal advice if necessary. Should this occur, the committee may convene in camera. When the committee is ready, a motion will be made to grant or reject the application for the compliance audit. The committee will present an oral decision, and a formal notice will be forwarded to the respective applicants and responded by email. If the application is granted, a compliance audit will be ordered. If the application is rejected, the committee will take no further action. The decision of the committee can be appealed through the Ontario Court of Justice within 15 days. The name of the applicant in this matter is Vezina. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Can you please state your name?
My name is Gregory Hugh Vezina.
Gregory Hugh Vezina. Is the applicant represented by legal counsel or is legal counsel present?
No, Mr. Chairman.
The name of the respondent in this matter is Carolyn Parrish. The respondent is present. Is the respondent represented by legal counsel and is legal counsel present? No. Madam Clerk, can you please confirm for the record that the application was filed within the applicant time limit?
Yes, it was.
Can you please also confirm that the applicant name was an eligible elector in the most recent municipal election?
Yes, he was.
Can you please confirm that the respondent name was an eligible candidate in the most recent municipal election?
Yes.
The application meets the criteria and may be put before the committee for the consideration. Mr. Vezina, you may proceed.
Can I do it from here?
It's all on your floor.
Thank you.
So I'll let you. Are you going to be using the...
No, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Carolyn, members of this staff, and ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start my remarks by drawing the attention of this committee to the 2011 financial statement of Carolyn Parrish. I'd like you to turn to page 1 on box C, where you'll see that there's a summary of income and expense.
Page 1, box C.
Box C. Box B, sorry.
Okay.
And you'll see under number 1 that the total spending limit was $44,879.45. If you look down to box number 4, you'll see that the spending limit was $44,409.73. The difference is $469.72, which is the amount that she declared in her statements that is below the spending limit. If it were to be found during these proceedings or in an audit that she had underreported expenses of just $470 or 1% of the total, she would be over the limits and subject to the sanctions in the legislation. Now, in number 1, I claim that the rent expense for her campaign office donation for good or service from MB Properties was $750. I have comparable sites for the same time period. I've not been able to find any other facility of comparable size available for such a low cost other than Mr. Cash's, which I also question in a separate application.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Yes, I responded that we should leave another,
I was reading my submission,
Okay.
word for word, sorry.
Thank
If my
you.
submission was out of order, well, hey, what did I know? Thank you.
The issue of Mr. Cashin will deal with Mr.
Yes, I know, I was just reading my submission, so
All right, carry on.
I'll edit him out of everything that I've said, okay? Thank you. The fact that the property was valued, I believe that the MB Properties provided a donation in excess of the limit of $750, which I believe is also an infraction. And I believe that the fact the property is valued at exactly $750 as the maximum limit on donations is just too coincidental to believe that it's the actual market value, and it's clearly a conveniently agreed upon number. Now I refer to the committee now to some exhibits, and I'd like to start with Exhibit 1. I've made 5 copies for the members of the committee. Do I pass it to you, or can I just give it to them?
Do you have a copy for this one?
Oh, I have one in my hand, Carolyn, you can see it. Thank you. So the first page is a business card from Mavis Bristol Dental, from the owner, Dr. David Misers. And the second page is a printout from 411CA on the internet of their business to confirm that they exist. I personally met with the doctor and spoke to him about his lease in his unit, which is 2 doors over from the unit that Carolyn Parrish occupies. And he informed me that he paid over $40 a square foot for his rent. He'd been there for years and years, and he renegotiated his lease several years ago, and there was virtually no space available in there at a lower price. Now he
Are you
did.
calling him for as a witness?
I'm not calling him as a witness. I'm making him a statement and putting this in.
But he's saying to you that he pays
$44 a square foot. Yes. Okay. Now I'd like to then submit to the committee a second exhibit. And this is the for AMDA Computers, which is right beside that doctor. I'll just do whatever. And he's rated next door. So Carolyn Parrish is in number 8, the doctor is in number 10, and the computer store is in number 11. And I also went and spoke to the owner of that. His name is there, I can't pronounce it, but in any event. And I talked to him about the same subject, and he'd been there for many, many years, and he also told me that he was paying over $40, and that most of the tenants, well, virtually all of them, were in those strip malls, strip stores in there, 12 or 13 units, were paying the same price. Now, I wish to refer to a third exhibit, and that is an email I received from Mr. John Kirchhoff, who owned the clinic, the Healing Center, on the Bottom Avenue, that was where Mr. Cashin located his campaign headquarters. And I draw the committee's... Oh, I need my copy back. Thank you. Now, I have a witness here who worked in that clinic for over 10 years who will confirm this. This is an email from Mr. Kirchhoff. And he confirms that they own the building, and they sold that property in May of this year. And they had an agreement to rent it at $12 a month. But as soon as it closed,
$12 a month?
$12 a square foot gross. And as soon as it closed, they changed the rent to $33 a square foot, which was basically market price. And so they immediately left. And a month later, Mark Cashin moved in and declared rent at $1.25 a square foot.
We're not bringing
Okay, I'll come back to that. So when I compare this as a comparison... No, this is an exhibit that proves market rent... Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. This is an exhibit that proves the market value rent for similar space in Ward 5 from a real estate agent. Doesn't matter whether it was Mark Cash's or Carolyn Parrish's or the dentist or anybody else. This is an exhibit with proof of market value. And finally, I'd like to draw the attention of the committee to a printout I have Carolyn Parrish's webpage, which I'm sure she remembers. Thank you. And I'd like to draw the committee members' attention to page 2, which of course confirms her campaign address and her different phone lines, multiple phone lines. But more importantly, to page 3, and if you notice at the top of the page, the first event is the official opening of the campaign office. It was a great success, and that was posted on July 18th, which was the day of the event. So she was using the facilities at least from July 18th through September 19th, according to her own materials. Now, if you look though down below, at the next two below, it says our campaign is launched, and that was posted July 8th. Now, I'm not sure when she started using the campaign headquarters, but I certainly know that she used it for 2 months and 2 days at least.
That's going back from July 18th or going back to
July 18th to September 20th is basically 2 months and 2 days. She certainly didn't leave that campaign to headquarters before midnight on September 19th. So she had to have it rented for at least 2 months. Now, if you calculate, I made a typo here, but if you calculate $750 over 2 months, it works out to $350 a month for 1,100 square feet. The same rent anywhere else for 1,100 square feet calculates to $3,667, and for 2 months it's $7,334. Now, she declares a rate at 10% of what everybody else pays. If the real fair market value, and that is the question, the legislation requires to declare the fair market value. If you get a great deal from someone, that's good for you, but you still have to declare the value. And if that value, the real value, which was, in my opinion, $7,500 almost, is more than $470 higher than she declared, she's in clear violation of several statutes. Now, I'd like the Commission to turn to box C on page 2 of our 2011 return, please. You'll see that she's declared it's a total of $396. It's made up of office expenses of $1,590.70, and then the other insurance campaign office $756, and delivery of and in-kind donation for the campaign office of $750, which is what's at issue. Now, what jumped out at me is that her insurance is more money than her rent. Now, I'd like to refer the committee that I believe that is the best point of comparison as to what Ms. Parrish declared on her as her office expense in 2011 Ward 5 campaign by simply referring to her 2010 Ward 6 campaign declaration. So if you could pull out that file, please.
Mr. Chairman, question, what does the 2010 have to do with here, Mr. Adams?
The figures in the 2010 are contained in and part of her 2011 campaign. And for comparative purposes, this is a candidate that has run before and declared one thing in a previous election, and I certainly have every right to call to attention to the committee glaring errors or contradictions between her returns.
Are you referring to the inventory?
Pardon me?
Are you referring to the inventory from previous campaign?
Yes, and her expenses and costs? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, are we dealing with the number 1? Is there a point for it? Okay, if we're dealing with number 1, is the list, please let's, in order not to create a confusion, let's deal with number 1 is the 2010 statements declaration filed, there was no default issued by the city clerk of the 2010 statement, so the 2010 statement is irrelevant to this hearing for purposes of the
No, no, I object. I want a legal opinion. No, I have evidence. No, I object. Madam Attorney, I object. City Attorney, I suggest the committee get advice.
Okay, we have, sorry, we have,
Yeah, you have the right to make whatever decision.
what are we going to wait the evidence? You
Oh.
presented the evidence to us. You want us to refer back to 2010. I see where you're coming from, and I'm understanding that there are three issues in this complaint. The first issue, the fair market value of the rent,
Correct.
which we already talked about it. You gave us comparables.
I'm not finished. Thank you.
Accounting.
Yeah.
So you're going on the second allegations.
No, I'm on the first
You're
issue.
still on the first one,
Yeah.
and you want to bring some values from 2010.
And other evidence of the values, which is the whole question. Is it fair market value? If you compare what she spent and declared in 2010 with 2011, you see, holy, there's some big changes that happen. And it is relevant to this committee because it is what she filed and ran on in 2010, and it's reflected in her 2011 return. I mean, I can't understand why you won't let me bring the evidence.
How is it relevant?
If she spent $5,000 in 2010 and $3,000 in 2011, and yet the office space was the same size, that proves that she violated the rules.
Mr. Chairman,
Just go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Just 1 minute. I'll give
I
you.
didn't have an office in 2010.
Okay, just hang on a second.
Just
And if
to
it showed that, Carol,
I
if it
didn't
showed that
have-
somewhere, it would be easy.
No crisscross questioning. Madam Parrish, you will be given an opportunity to rebut and to answer your position. Go ahead, Mr.
just to be clear here, what rules is she violating? Can you suggest from the charter we have? Which rule exactly? Can you clarify that?
I'm trying to establish the market value, the expenditures for rent in campaigns in Ward 5, in provincial and federal, for office space. What 112 candidates have declared as the price for office space is higher than what she's declared in 2010 and in 2011 and in the federal election. And I have the evidence to prove it. The reports from Elections Canada for the candidates, etc. I can prove the value of the rent, and you're denying me the ability to do it.
But I try to understand the reliability to compare the relevance of the previous 2010 campaign to compare to 2011. Situation could be different. It's a regular election. This is a by-election. Okay, the term could be shorter. There are so many ifs about it.
And
so I want to understand the relevancy from the 2010 to 2011 to wait and evaluate, see if we're going to allow you to go and do the comparison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess, okay, what I'm trying to establish is that it's not just Carolyn Parrish's declaration for office expenses in 2011 that I intend to refer to. I intend to refer to the other candidates in 2011 and in 2010 because it establishes documentary proof of the value of rent as filed in multiple elections. It's proof. Now, it's up to you to determine whether you accept it as proof and whether it makes any difference. But I do suggest, with all due respect, that I have the right to present it.
You have a question?
yes, can I?
Go ahead.
The two questions that you, Mr. Vezina, am I correct? in
Thank you.
saying?
Yeah.
The financial statements of Mrs. Parrish was signed off by a reputable firm of chartered accountants, which there is no qualification that they found any glaring discrepancies, etc. The question I have to ask of you is, what the rental that was paid and declared in the financial statements of Mrs. Parrish for 2011, was that the rent actually paid by Mrs. Parrish in 2011 and declared in her financial statement?
That's what she declared, but that's not the issue. The issue
No,
is
I'm
what's the
asking
value.
questions. Was that the rent paid and declared in the statements signed off by the financial accountant?
As I just pointed out to the committee, it's found on other number 2, in-kind donation for campaign office at $750 on page C3 of her return.
You haven't answered my question, sir. I've asked the question, I repeat the question if I may. Was the rent that Mrs. Parrish paid for 2011 and declared in her financial statement and signed off by the auditors, was that the rent paid? Yes or no?
She declared she paid $750.
Right. Okay, so you are acceding to the statement which I made that that was the rent paid.
I'm acceding that she declared that was the rent paid. I'm not acceding that
You
that's
have
the
no-
value of the rent, and I'm not acceding there was a deal to give her a discount. Thank you very much.
I'm asking the question, and
Yes.
I'm asking, is that the rent paid and declared in the financial statements by Mrs. Parrish?
Yes.
Do you acknowledge that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever, just,
If that is the case, then unless you can show, at least speaking for myself as a commentator, my other members may have questions, unless you can show that the rental declared in the financial statement was wrong, was not the rent paid, then I say, I put to you, sir, that it's irrelevant as to what other rent was comparative or what other rent was alleged to be not paid. This was clearly set out in cases before this, in other cases. And that the relevant matter is what was the rent paid. And if the rent paid is what is declared in the financial statement, unless you can show to us compelling evidence that is not, that the statement of the rent paid is wrong, then it's irrelevant in your argument as to alleged misstatements of rent.
you're finished?
Yes, sir.
With all due respect, I totally disagree. The law says, regardless of how you've interpreted it, sir, the law says if the fair market value of the rent was more than $750, it's an offense. And you cannot ignore that. You can't. That's the law. And you're denying me the chance to prove it. You're saying you're not even going to consider it now. Bring a motion and throw me out the air. We'll go to court.
Aren't you, do I continue, Mr. Chair? Do I have the, you're saying the law says that, based on your legal expression, which you just stated, are you ignoring the fact that this ruling was made in Heap v. Lyras by Justice Salem, that is irrelevant in a preceding case as to the rent paid is what is declared, and if that is the rent paid, then that is the rent paid as declared in the financial statement.
Sir, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. What I know is the legislation says if a candidate files a return and the actual fair market value of the rent is more than was paid, it's not an issue of how much you paid, this was a fair market value more, that is an offense, that is something that you have an obligation to investigate and rule on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, rule and...
Are you saying on page number 2 of the financial statement, the other item which points to us $750, it says in-kind donation for campaign office,
Correct.
right? And you're saying this is the rent?
That's what she put down as her rent, as she says, in-kind donation for campaign office. And office expenses of $15.97.
Going back to the issue, doing the comparison of the 2010. What's your comparison of 2010? Comparison of 2010.
I already remember the words of Jack Siegel, who said, it's incumbent on him to prove otherwise.
Okay.
This is going to be interesting.
We will consider you the relevancy to compare the numbers from 2011 to 2010. Very brief.
Thank you very much.
We'll grant you that.
Thank you very much. The whole point is that these numbers are big numbers and the detailed numbers aren't filed. So what you have to do is read through the numbers and try and get a picture, which is what I'm trying to do. So, if I can continue. Okay. Her expenses in 2010 on page 2, you'll see, were $5,137.06.
What page are you on?
On page 2, line, total expenses, office expenses, C2, in the box C2.
Yes, 5,137.
Right. Now, there was nowhere else in that return that said she got a donation from office space. But the point I want to draw attention to is that her office expenses dropped over $2,000 or 40%. That's the point I wanted to make.
Sorry, can you give me the comparative numbers here on 2011?
Yeah, it's on box C, page 2, and it's $3,096. So the difference is just over $2,000.
So you put on that number? Just increasing my police on these numbers. Put on the numbers. Okay, I see on 2010 office expense $5,137.06.
Correct.
Comparatively, you're comparing it to 2011.
And on box C, the combined numbers of office expenses of $1,590, insurance $756, and in-kind donations of $750.
Okay.
So they're combined together. In 2010, they're just a single number.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is that they're 40% less. They went down. Okay? That's all. If I could also refer, I'm not pulling out the returns, but I would like to read for the record so you know, that the other Ward 5 by-election candidates' office expense comparisons I had were Peter Adams, 3621.
Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me, yeah, in order.
this is not
this is
dealing
irrelevant.
with the candidate, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Comparing to other candidates is irrelevant.
Thank you
You
very
have to
much.
address the point,
Thank you very
the
much.
allegations, to support the allegation, what this Carolyn Parrish has fought.
Thank you. Then the final comparison I'd like to do, which is a fact, comes from Elections Canada website, and it is the office rent and heating expenses for candidates in Mississauga, Ward 5 area, in the Mississauga area. And these are the same basic office expenses, and they are all substantially higher. They're all, Eve Adams, $3,000, Omar Alabradra, $6,700, Navdeep Baines, $4,000, Bonnie Cromley, $7,600, and so on. The point I'm trying to make is simply this. All of the other rents charged in campaigns for basically similar type mall space
This is
are in
like
the
the
thousands
telephone
and thousands of
argument
dollars.
on February
Okay?
7th.
Which is a fair market value in my opinion. Carolyn Parrish was lucky enough to get a lower rate. Now I brought as a witness to prove the value of these office rents a real estate agent. Now if I'd like to call my witness and prove the fair market value of these properties.
Your witness is a real estate agent, you're saying?
In Mississauga,
We want only, okay. We don't want any comparison to other candidates, federal, municipal, or council.
he's going to compare the fair market value rent for the fair market value of
The
properties
subject matter of
similar to
property.
Carolyn's. Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, call the witness.
Please come.
Yes. Real estate agent right there.
My name is Amir an independent broker, and I own my own company. It's called my own realty. My office is 50 Burnham, so just around the corner. I received a phone call, and somebody asked me to give the market rates of the malls, which are registered, we call it outside malls in the area of Mississauga. So right now, which is today, today I have two comparisons, and the basic rate is 31 and 33 plus $13.25 and $10 or $11 as maintenance, which is coming more than $44 in today's value. So probably the last year it was a little bit lower. So these are the two things. These are the two things.
Thank you.
Any questions?
These rates which you just mentioned, those are in current today's market.
Yeah.
But the premises was occupied last July to September, as pointed out by the applicant.
Right. So
Do you have the numbers in
yeah,
that period?
actually in the rental market, the rents doesn't go high. They go high like 1.5%, 2%, not more than that. Not like the residential market, because every tenant is for 5 years plus 5 years plus 5 years. So they go like 15 years rent. So the rent increase is like 25 cents to 50 cents per square feet, which is not too much in the retail market.
The submission which you gave us here is 848 Burnham Road West. The premises which occupies was on Bristol Road, 720, I believe.
This is even in that premises there is nothing available. This is the current I gave you, which is available.
It's called apples
And
and
you
oranges.
compare that mall is
What are you gonna
better mall than these two comparisons. I don't have anything available in any of the similar malls. These are a second-class mall I gave you.
Let me ask you a question here. This particular premises, 848 Burnham Road West, unit number 2B, $33 square foot net. This would be an ordinary lease for what term of the lease we talking about? Short term, long term?
Long term.
What is long term?
The long term note normally is 5 years, and you have right to extend for another 5 years.
So these are net.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask this question?
If my colleagues have any questions, I'll be ready on that matter, just comparables and numbers here. Any other questions? Mr. Chong? No. Richard? No? Yes, go ahead.
Amir, would you agree that for a short-term lease, you can get a discount, but that the discount wouldn't be anywhere near 80 or 90%?
Not
Yeah, exactly. You might get half if you're lucky. What would the discount be for a shorter term lease?
I would say, in my opinion, sometimes the people know that you are in a real necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So the rent is
The rent. Right.
But sometimes if you have, more people are very rich people. They're not like ordinary rent. So for me it's okay. If my brothers and sisters go on rent for them, actually, for 1 year they don't really care.
Right.
For me, I'm distributing that way. So it depends. It cannot be.
Can you answer the question when he's asked,
Sure.
is there a discount?
Is there a
For short-term
discount?
lease, 90% discount.
No.
80%. Okay, and is it not, one question, and is it not true that MB Property is a very large property rental company that owns a great number of properties, and they really don't usually discount for anybody? Are you familiar with them?
Wow, this guy's
In
really
my
something.
opinion, very
Okay, so the fact of the matter is that the price, the market price for the space for 1,100 square feet in that mall is more than $375 a month. Much, much more. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any question?
Madam Parrish, do you have any questions?
No. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I want to close on the market value rent office expense issue by saying that what's happened is her expenses for rent in the office are below anybody. And you won't let me refer to any other candidate returns, but hers are below anybody that have an office for comparable space on a square foot basis. And that clearly it's worth more than $375 a month.
We heard you that.
And if it's $200 more per month, it basically puts her over the limit. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're done with the allegation number one?
I'm done with number
Each
one.
allegation one by one.
Yeah,
My colleagues will ask you questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll go to allegation number two.
yeah, thank you.
And you will get the question to you by all. And do you have any question on allegation one, Mr. Chair? No. If you have no further questions, go ahead on allegation number two.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Now, I'd like to draw the attention to the committee. This is the sign issue, and I'd like to provide the committee a couple more exhibits. And I have 3 exhibits, so I'm basically going to do them at once so that it's easier. And these are 3 articles that appeared in the Mississauga News. You probably saw them.
Oh yeah, we can believe what's in the Mississauga News.
The first 3 exhibits were marked 1, 2, 3.
you.
Allegation 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3.
Get it right.
So there will be 5 exhibits, 2 submissions from the vested agents of the listing. So 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5.
Oh, and this,
The board, the committee doesn't have the exhibit number 4 and 5, but we had an opportunity to review it.
and so there's one
This
more.
will be exhibit allegation 2, 1.
Yeah, I got it in the map.
Sorry, here. Here.
Hey.
Thank you. That goes close. Thank you. I summarized the quotes from the newspaper articles that I want to refer to on the exhibit from Mississauga News page, so that you don't have to read the whole
So
article.
everybody got 4 copies? 4 copies? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So, in summary, in the sign of the Times, there was...
Which one are you reading from?
I'm reading from Exhibit 1, which was signed in the Times October 8th. And the quote is from Peter Adams. August 8th, I'm sorry. Peter Adams is quoted, the quote there is Ward 5.
Is it relevant to bring Peter Adams to this?
It's relevant to the sign issue, and this is what this is all about. Ward candidate Peter Adams says his campaign had nothing to do with the removal of Carolyn Parrish signs that disappeared overnight from prime locations. And this was an article about a bunch of signs on Bristol Road that basically disappeared overnight. The second one is another article from August 8th, and the quote there is from Bonnie Crombie. And she says, when Bonnie Crombie canvassed on Sunday, she took note that the only signs erected so far in the campaign were those of former Ward 6 Councillor Carolyn Parrish and Peter Adams, husband, former candidate, Councillor Eve Adams, and they're about evenly divided. This morning when she drove back up to begin her daily 8 hours of canvassing, only one candidate's signs remain. Bristol Road is blue. There's no trace of Miss Parrish's signs, says Crombie. It's only 2 days of campaigning, the sign wars are already front and center. And I live in the ward, and I went through this, and I saw these signs, and I saw the number of signs. And by the end of the campaign, there was another quote on September 16th, which is the third article. And when Bonnie Crombie canvassed on Sunday, she took note that the only signs that were erected... Oh, wait a minute, I said the same thing. Oh, I typed the wrong one. Sorry, I have to read a different quote. I lost my quote. Sorry, guys.
Okay,
And anyway, whatever. The bottom line is that it clearly shows that at the beginning of the campaign, everybody was commenting on the controversy created by the sign competition between Carolyn Parrish and Adams. Signs were absolutely everywhere. And there was a controversy about the stickers that are being painted over, which was reported in the media. The second day...
how does this tie into the allegation?
Because it ties into the sign issue. If I can just finish, I'll get to the point, please. Okay. What happened is a huge number of signs on the early few days of the campaign were destroyed. Okay? And the point I want to make is that now Carolyn Parrish said in her previous return, in the Ward 6 election, which is the inventory in her Ward 7 or her Ward 5 report, which is relevant if you'll look on page...
Fortunately, I videotaped a lot of signs,
On page 7 of 8.
September 17th and the 18th.
Or what she had at the end of that campaign.
2010.
In 2010, right. And then you have to compare the opening in 2011. So if we can just do this, because this is very, very important. If you turn to page 7 of 8 of box 4, schedule 4 of the 2010 return, you'll see at the bottom 280 wooden stakes, 85 wooden stakes, and 82 wooden stakes. If you add those wooden stakes up, there's 447 of them. Now, if you go to our 2011 return on page 7 of 8, schedule 3 at the top, all of a sudden, the 477 wooden stakes from the previous campaign have magically become 700 wooden stakes. That's an error. That's a mistake. Now, how could her auditor know that? He wouldn't know that because he didn't compare the two returns. But this committee can compare the two returns because that is her legal designation in one return and that's the legal designation in the other, and they don't match. Okay? Now, if I can continue. She says that she only used 50 large signs and 150 small signs. As my contention, and this is very difficult to prove unless we ran around and took a picture of every sign, but it's my contention that if she used 50 more signs, she'd be over the limit, way over the limit. And I think it's important to find out what happened to the signs and why the numbers don't match. And that's why you have an audit.
Yeah.
So, what I've said here is, you've got different numbers for stakes, you've got questionable numbers for sign use, in my opinion, and you got the expense. Because I don't know where the $700 is accounted for in this, the 700 signs versus the 447, I don't know where that money is, but at $1.23, it's $275. Now she's only $192 away from the limit. So if you now add $100 a month to her rent, she's way over the limit. That's the point I'm trying to make to this committee. There are enough little numbers here. She's so close to the limit that there's enough little numbers here that should have been or could have been declared that will put her over the limit, and that is the basis for my complaint. And I will refer, I don't know about all these legal precedents everybody talk about in these cases. I didn't come to court with a lawyer, come here with a lawyer, but I did speak to someone in city council's office in Toronto about compliance audits. And I was informed that in the city of Toronto there were 2 compliance audits ordered for candidates when it was shown there was an error in their return, and the obvious implication was made that if there was one error, there could be more, and it needed to be checked with an audit. There is a clear error in that return. And I'm done on that point. Thank you.
Anyone have any question?
Yes, sir. First and foremost, the 2010 statement that Mr. Vezina is referring to, as it relates to the 2011 financial statement, which is what is questioned, the financial statement of 2010 shows that closing inventory was written off on the schedule for box meat. And that's as it relates to the 2011 financial statement. I am a bit confused as to what Mr. Vezina is alleging with regards to the cost of the signs used by Mrs. Parrish. Because the signs were written off in 2010 for the financial statement, which are characteristic of rather than as a real issue.
Yeah, the signs are her property. Jack Siegel, February 7th, 2012.
The fair market value, whether they're written off in the previous campaign or not, the fair market value, if they're used in this campaign, has to be declared. Now, the point I made was simply this, that the number of stakes she said she had in the last campaign and the number of stakes she started this campaign with all of a sudden grew by 50%. That's not insignificant. That amount is almost 3/4 of the amount needed to put her over the expense limit if it's been improperly accounted. I'm not an auditor. I'm not an accountant. I think it's the job of an audit, compliance audit, to find out what that's all about, because it is an error, and as has been said in the previous Toronto cases, you make glaring errors in your returns that could affect the outcome or could affect the net numbers, and this is not an insignificant number. That's my point.
Thank you. No questions? Can you tell me the allegation?
I'm done with number 2.
Just in a nutshell, that you questioning that she had the inventory, the closing inventory on page 7 of 2010 of 280 of the wooden stake of 2x2x4, 85 wooden stake of 2x2x4, and 82 stakes of 2x2x5. The total of 447. All of a sudden, on page 7 of 2011, the wooden stake 2x2x4 at $1.23 a unit, which is the same as in the previous one, becomes $700.
Thank you.
Note it. Should get a chance to respond to it. We'll take it from there. Can we go on to allegation number 3?
Okay. Now, I'd like to draw the members of the committee's attention, please, to Carolyn Parrish's 2011 campaign audit on page 3, box F, which is the statutory declaration. And there, it says, I, and no name is written in for the name of the candidate, which is required for the statutory declaration to be valid. I checked every other return for every other candidate in 2011, and not one of them made that mistake. So then I checked every other return from every other candidate for 2010, and only one made the mistake. And if you look on that same page of our 2010 return, box F, you'll see that Carolyn Parrish doesn't have to do her paperwork in the city of Mississauga. Only other candidates do. Now, the fact of the matter is, and this is a very serious matter, you either comply with the law or you don't. The fact of the matter is that in the past, the mayor of Mississauga was investigated for forgetting to declare a conflict of interest to a meeting she arrived late for, where other councillors had said on the record that she was going to declare a conflict, and she forgot. And she paid the price. There was an investigation, there was a termination, and there should have been, and rightfully so. Now in this case, Carolyn Parrish doesn't have to do her statutory legal declarations, and I suggest that if it's found that she didn't comply, she can say, but it's not a legitimate declaration. We've had candidates barred from running for office for 4 years for being 10 minutes late in filing their paperwork, or being 1 day late. And my question to this committee is, why should Carolyn Parrish be special? And that's my points on that issue.
Okay? Any question?
Well, just my question, I understand what you're saying. I can see very clearly that she did not fill her name in. Do you know what section of the Act you're saying that she contravened by not filling in her name?
I'm not a lawyer, but I know that when you swear something, if your name isn't on it, it's not legal. Okay? Period. So if it's not legal in court, it's not legal in federal jurisdiction and provincial jurisdiction, it can't be legal under the Municipal Act. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask of the chair, through the chair of the clerk, was there any notice of default served by the city clerk's office to the respondent Carolyn Parrish for any alleged breach of the declaration?
Yeah, good question, because I would
The
ask.
fact that
That is the city statute and all.
sections were not filled in, sir. I put to you, Mr. Vezina, that Mrs. Parrish would have to declare before the city clerk, in signing our financial statements before handing it to the city clerk. And the fact that she may have verbally declared and she signed off on the declaration, I don't see really what you are alleging. It's a valid declaration because she signed off on it in the presence of the city clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no notice of any default issued by the city clerk's office against the respondent.
Just because the city clerk didn't catch it doesn't mean
That's
it's
not
right.
my- that's
If
not
I
my-
sign an affidavit and I
That's
don't
not
type
my-
my name on an affidavit and it's a sworn document, it is not legal. You can dance around all you want, but the law is the law. Okay, vote how you want, do what you want. It's not my job to decide this. It's my job to present my evidence. That's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Richard? Okay. Fine, we heard you. I have no further question also.
Thank you.
Now I'll give an opportunity to respondent and Parrish to reply to the allegations.
I'm almost afraid to start. If I start describing how many steaks I've actually got in my garage, you're going to have a meltdown.
So if you can go allegation 1, 2, 3.
Okay. I'm happy to be able to address Mr. Vezina's concern with photocopies of original invoices and checks that I've put into a binder for you, if I can just walk you through it. There are 3 issues. It's the blue binder. I will walk you through the documents in response issue 1. On the first page.
So we're gonna take this,
Just,
like,
you
tag
know
line
what,
as
start
an
at the
exhibit.
beginning and I'll just help you with the tabs.
I just want to enter this as an exhibit.
Oh, yeah,
Just to clarify, these are individual.
Yes, these are individuals, the number on the allegation number 2, right?
Mhm.
So you want the numbers?
I'll just continue with
Yeah,
6,
continue
7,
with
and so on.
allegation 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, on the first 2 pages, I just put in Mr. Vezina's concerns. In lines 3 and 4, he suggests he was unable to find any offices of comparable size available for $750 last August. Well, he was right. There were only 2 spaces in the south end of Ward 5. One was actually out of the ward on the south side of Eglinton, and by the time I looked at it and went back, it was leased, so it was gone. The only one available was this one that we took at 720 Bristol. It was available because it had been leased to Mr. Submarine or Submarine Sandwiches, and they weren't going to take it until, I think they're still renovating it, I don't know if it's open yet, but they had paid part of that lease to sign it when they did, so the building was available. There was a problem with it because the tenant who left it left a destroyed mess. There were holes punched in the drywall, there was shelves on the floor, the toilet was not working. There was debris all over the place. So Mr. Baker said, you can squat here for a couple months, but I'm not responsible for it. First thing you have to do is get me $750 worth of, or $5 million worth of insurance, because if something happens to you or anybody in that unit, it's not covered by the general insurance for the plaza.
You submitted 750 and then you missed 500.
Sorry,
Can you verify that?
No,
So
I
you asked you for $5 million insurance.
he wanted a $5 million insurance policy, which you'll see the documents in here. Normally, he doesn't ask a tenant for that because he has a blanket policy on his buildings through that plaza. He also suggested to us we have to shovel a lot of stuff out of there, and we did. We spent quite a bit of time. That opening that was on my website actually took place in a pile of debris. It was all shoved in the back. We did that, and we set to cleaning it up and covering the holes in the walls. But there were 2 vacancies. When we started, the MB Properties was in negotiations with Submarine Sandwiches, but they weren't prepared to move until several months hence. In fact, I drove by 2 weeks ago and they're still renovating. MB agreed to let us use the office for the campaign under the following conditions. 1, we had to clean truckloads of garbage and junk out of it. 2, we had to get our own full 3-month insurance with a $5 million liability. Not that we were using it for 3 months, but that's the minimum policy. Because the unit wasn't part of the tenant's coverage, he was doing absolutely no work, no renovations, no cleaning, no anything. We were solely responsible for all of it. The electricity was on a group meter, so we couldn't pay for electricity, so he said a fair exchange would be we would pay his equal billing on the gas from Enbridge, which we did. If you go to the first red tab, you will see my returns. I don't have the 210s up front. I didn't know that was going to be a problem. If you go to page, I've numbered them up in the right corner, page 4. You'll see on that page there are office expenses of $1,590.70. I'll show you the breakdown. There are pieces in there that are part of this. There's $756 for the insurance, which I've never had to pay for renting a campaign office. I've been in 9 campaigns, never had to do that before. I'll explain to you why. And then there was an in-kind donation of $750, which we gave to Envy. If you go to the first blue tab up at the top, you have to turn it. The office expenses are highlighted in green. The first one there you can see is check 214 CIBC Visa. Cooperators, when I phoned to do it, they said, oh, we'll throw it on your Visa. So when I got my Visa bill, I had to do one separate check, which was check 214, that covered Visa, because you have to do every expense out of an individual check. Further down, the Enbridge 3 months rate was $220.35. We didn't use any gas because it only heats. And if you remember last summer, we weren't putting the heat on. And you go down, and I suggested we give a donation, in-kind donation of $750, because I knew myself, out of an abundance of caution, that that was going to cause people's eyebrows to go up. This wasn't enough rent. If you're down the bottom left corner, our total office cost And we were actually only used it just over 6.5 weeks, even though the website said differently. $1,726.35. Now, these long-term leases you're talking about that are 5 years and 10 years, you tell the person who's running into you what you want it to look like, where you want the walls, what color you want it painted, what kind of floors you want, all the equipment and everything else. Nothing. All we got was the 4 walls, and we had to take about 3 truckloads of stuff out of there to the dump, and we had to clean it all up. The one good thing that happened was all the light fixtures in the ceiling were all broken, and the day we were in there slugging away, EnerSource came around. They had a salesperson come around and say, we would like to replace all your lights with energy efficient lights for free. And we said, well, that's the tooth fairy has arrived. So we said, sure, go ahead. So they replaced all the lights for us, and they did several other buildings along there. And all you had to do was put a sticker in the window saying we're using energy efficient lights thanks to EnerSource. So if you go specifically to the next set of tabs, you've got a pink receipt, a meantime receipt, which I say I insisted that they take, even though they didn't care one way or the other. The place was being rented by somebody else, so they didn't care if they got that or not. The page after, you've got the receipt for the operators, where I paid $756. Next page, you've got the certificate of insurance that shows you on the right side $5 million liability. And the next page, you've got the check, CIBC Visa, $756. Next page, you've got charges for gas, which again, as I must stress, we didn't use any heat. We just did that as a token to help pay some of the utilities because we were using electricity, but he couldn't separate that out. So I don't know how much electricity we used. And then there's a check to Enbridge for $220.35. So that pretty much covers what we paid. I know fair market value where I come from, it's whatever the seller wants and the purchaser is willing to pay. Given that it was already, it was double dipping, it was already being paid by a future tenant. I think putting in almost $2,000 for 7 weeks was fair on my part. It was acceptable to Mr. Baker. It was acceptable to me. If he'd have asked me for more, I would have paid him more. When you look at the 210 return, I didn't have an office. So the office supply category, we need to talk about this later. When you get these financial returns, it doesn't break stuff down for you. So you don't know what's rent, you don't know what's stamps, you don't know what's stationary. And you lump it into various sections. And so I used my house in 2010. So that $5,000 probably was stamps, envelopes, all kinds of things that would be considered office supplies. But I didn't pay any rent, didn't pay my husband rent, I'm sure. And I didn't pay rent at all. I didn't have a campaign office. So doing the comparisons from 210 to 211 is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. If you want to go to the next tab, there's 2 pictures of signs. I've got them in there, you might want to look at.
You going to the other issue number 2?
Oh yeah, I'll
Just
stop.
pause on other issue 1.
Yep, I'll
If you have
pause.
any questions?
Mrs. Parrish, you said that you cleaned up the office. Was it just volunteers cleaning up the office, or did you pay for any of those?
No, are you kidding? It was my kids, my son-in-laws who married into a family with elections. They learned that they get dirty easily. And the campaign manager's son was home from university. He was put to work because he didn't have a job yet. My husband, I was in there with my sleeves rolled up.
You mentioned that there was a double dipping here, we used the term double dipping. And the rent was paid already upfront.
I don't know what the agreement was. I know there was a lease signed. If you drive by there today, there's a Mr. Submarine or a submarine sandwich. I know it was blocked out, it was done, but they weren't living in yet. So whether he paid full rent, or he paid a token rent, or what he did, I don't know. All I know is Mr. Baker said to me, these are the conditions, it's yours.
And one of the major conditions is the insurance liability.
Yeah, absolutely, which I've never had to pay before. Yeah.
Clean the place, pay the...
And pay the utilities.
The
only one that we can separate.
One utility was separate, and the liability of insurance department. How long did you give you the premises for?
He said I could have it for as long as till the election. I think we started cleaning it up just before the 15th of the month in July, and we didn't use it for a while. And then we used it full steam about the last week of July.
Did you sign any short-term lease?
No,
No, it's just a
Handshake.
agreement, handshake.
but I couldn't get the keys until I produced the
The insurance.
insurance certificate.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Parrish, the financial statements, rent that you paid and which you just explained, is that as set out and declared, since you are required by the ME to prepare your statement, is that as set out and declared in the financial statement signed off by your accountant?
Yes.
Thank you.
No further questions, you can go on additional view.
Do I get the
We'll give you
question?
the rebuts
At the end?
At the end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and
Addition number 2.
thank you. Number 2 is to do with the signs, and I've got 2 photographs, which I'll be referring to. I threw those in there. Before we address the numbers of signs, I wanted to show you the 2 that are in there. I want to talk to that one just for a second. The one on page 16 is an example. I saw Mr. Starr here earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but he wumped my ass good in Ward 6 at the end of 2010. So instead of stacking my signs neatly in my garage, as I normally am wont to do, I told my husband, dump them behind the shed in the back. I'm never running again, and that's the end of it. So they ended up behind the shed in our backyard, exposed to the elements. And what happens with chloroplast is you get water in those little channels, and then it freezes and they burst. So if you look at this sign, what you'll see is it's pretty dirty. Down on the bottom right where you've got the blue October 25th, the color comes off when it freezes. We had a lot of them glued together with leaves and the leaf imprints on them. It was a mess, I must tell you. Most of them ended up in the dump now. So when you look at those and then you look at the next one, you'll also see there was an October 25th date on the first one. There was re-elect at the top, which we tried covering, and that's an example of one we covered with 3 layers of tape. And we were worried that once they went up, the kids would start ripping the tape off, and then of course there'd be a great frou-frou in the papers. Carolyn Parrish is pretending she's getting re-elected in Ward 5, so we didn't use a lot of them. The inventory that shows you almost 900 signs, we had about 100 of the small ones and about 50 of the big ones that ended up not being used. They were still in my garage and still in good shape. So we did cover the re-elect. We did cut the bottom vote off. And later on in the election, we actually put those vote things, us little whirligigs on the top of the signs, the things we do to attract attention. It's really embarrassing sometimes. But anyway, those are the 2 sets of signs. So under the 2010 returns, we had 327 large signs, 915 small signs, but we only used the ones that were still in garage. So 150 small signs and 50 large signs. And as I said to you, after losing the election, I wasn't ever going to run again, so I wasn't terribly careful about stacking them. I had 2 or 3 other friends who won their elections, and they had all good spots in the garage, and I just let the stuff pile in there because I thought I was pretty much finished. The second blue tab, not the first one, the second one, has the signs as I mentioned. And as I say, the channels froze with water, it burst, there was damage from leaf stains, and you can see they had re-elected on October 25th, so we ordered new signs. In the interim, we were able to have volunteers tape over the re, although we were concerned the tape would be peeled off. We cut off the date section across the bottom for the ones in the garage, and we put some up on Sunday, August the 7th. We put up as many as we had for presents on Bristol Road, Ceremonial Drive, and Morning Star, because as has been mentioned, Peter Adams was painting the town blue, so we thought we'd get some up. I don't normally put signs up early, but it freaked me out a little bit, so we did 2 main drags in the south end, and we did Morning Star. If you look at his returns, which we're not supposed to refer to, he had an inventory of 4,247 signs. So you can tell from the proportions that we look like David and Goliath. Okay, I must comment on Mr. Vezina's position where he said we continue to dominate the election with the sign presence from the ward. We certainly did not. And towards the end, I would say Bonnie Crombie had signed quite a bit in the south end, and Peter Adams' signs were coming down, but we were holding about 1,600 positions. I wish it were true. So we ordered our new signs. They were delivered in 2 batches because the first batch we used up fairly quickly, so we had to order a second batch. So if you go to the first red tab again, it looks easy when you're talking. It's not as easy when I'm talking.
You're the politician.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean I'm an accountant.
Please address the chair.
Yes, sorry. I don't know why I can't find this. Okay, page 4, expenses subject to the limit. There's a yellow highlighted spot. That's the total cost of the new signs ordered in 2011, $9,498.17. And if you go to the first green tab, page 18, second green tab. Yeah, sorry. Page 18, there's an invoice from Lakefront Graphics for $6,130.25. Go to 19, there's a check that corresponds. And you notice the date on that is August the 12th. The next batch of the invoice is $3,296.78, and there's a check on the 25th of August for the same amount. So again, if you go back to the first blue tab, that side sheet, again, it shows you a layout of the actual cost of the signs I used. The first one is a check 203 for $6,130.25. Second one is check 205, $3,296.78. And then you drop down. I actually bought, or my husband went out and bought staples and cable ties to use on those. That was $71.14. And then the last one at $1,858 is the value that he attributed to the 150 signs that we actually used from 2010. So the total cost for the signs, $11,356.17. So although I had 1,242 signs supposedly left after 2010, they were mostly scrapped and they were too difficult to clean and modify for the Ward 5 by-election. Now, Mr. Vezina's comment on stakes, he's probably going to get upset, Mr. Chairman, but I have literally 1,000 stakes in my garage. What Schedule 3 says to you is give us a list of the ones that you use. So we gave you a list with 700 stakes on it. They're mostly 2x2, some are 4 feet, some are 5 feet. We gave you the current market value. The way we keep the stakes, some are required for the large signs only. The small signs come with little wires attached to them, so you don't need them for that. So we just needed them for the large signs. Large signs, if you're putting a single one on the lawn, it has 2 stakes, logical. If you're putting a corner one, you need 3 stakes. If you're putting it on a wooden fence, you need staples and no stakes. If you're putting it on a wire fence, you need the twist ties. If you're putting it on a wooden fence, you need staples. If you have signs taken down, as these articles would indicate some were taken down, usually vandals will take the signs down, they won't bother with the stakes, they just kick them over. So you can go back and you can replace them. So 700 signs, or stakes, is pretty good for putting up the number of large signs we had. Now, the way we bundle the stakes in our garage is we've been through 9 elections, and I have friends that store their stakes. It's quite the place. We bundle them in 25s, 24s or 25s, I can't remember, and tape them. And so when you take a bundle out, take the tag off, and we've got a cork board that's been in there for 1,000,000 years. the tag goes on the board. So we know how many have gone out of the garage up to the campaign office. At the campaign office, there were probably 2 bundles that were split open that we didn't use all of. So we said, okay, we took 700 out of the garage, we're giving you a value of 700. So the fact that they reproduced themselves from 2010 to 2011 is not unusual. I can make them do that again if you just go look at the garage. We've been through 9 elections. So I think that pretty much explains that. And the third complaint is a...
Okay,
sorry.
Maybe you have a question? No? No question. Go ahead, carry on.
Number 3, I'm embarrassed. What can I say? I've had the same accountant through 9 elections, Mr. Cruz. He's a senior gentleman, close to retirement. I guess the last 2, he just lost it for a minute and didn't fill it in. And I'm under instructions never to touch or look at these things, so I just pick them up. I go down, I give them to Pina or to Crystal, and they open them up. We go to page 4. They say, "You're who you say you are," and I say, "How can I sign them?" I'd be happy to sign one right now for you with a blank in it, but I must confess I did that. I think the most significant part of it is, as I think Ms. Chan pointed out, it isn't a breach of the Election Act not to have that filled in. And if you go through the returns, my name's in all the pages. And I think the most important part is swearing I am who I am and writing it in front of the city clerk, which I did. But to me, that's a fairly minor but an embarrassing.
Will you sign?
I did sign it. And I will print the name in there right now if you'd like me to.
Yeah? Any question on item number 3? No question? No further question. Okay, we heard the applicant, we heard the respondent.
I have some questions to respond to what she said.
You can just summarize, you gave the allegation, she responds to the allegations. The committee is going to evaluate both submissions based on the prima facie evidence and your presentation they have. I'm going to give you the opportunity to submit a final submission, final response, and then
Okay. So I'd like to start with her comment that it was she said $2,000 for 7 weeks.
is on the what, sir?
She said her rent, she made a verbal comment that her office expense was about $2,000 for 7 weeks. But that she pointed, I showed in her return what the rent was, and she pointed to some number in here of $1,700, which I don't know, what were you talking about?
That's my actual expenses for having that office.
Okay, so I went through those and I came up with on page 3, box C1 of her return, 2011 return. She says she has office expenses of $1,597.
$1,590.70. Yes.
And then she has insurance as other. And then she has in-kind donation from office. So, she declared that the rent she paid was $750. And the other expenses were not rent expenses, they were other office expenses, but they weren't rent. Now, she said verbally that it was for 6 or 7 weeks, but the material that I showed you proved she had an event, and she confirmed she had an event in those headquarters on the 18th of July. And she was still in those headquarters on the 20th of September. That is more than 2 months. Okay?
We heard you. That
Okay,
she-
I'm just
she had
responding to
a
what she said,
For 2
please.
months, no.
Okay.
We heard both sides, and we
Okay.
know
All right.
your
Now,
allegation was 2 months, and exactly you gave me some dates, I have a note here, that she paid in kind, she got in kind,
Right.
$750 to
Correct.
that premises. She
Correct.
explained
Thank you.
what were the conditions, and we heard her
Thank
submissions
you.
also.
And if I may...
So if you can summarize,
I-
I'm just going to give you a few minutes, let me hear me. Summarize You will have about 5 minutes, she'll get the 5 minutes, and then we'll make a decision.
I made my statements. She made hers. I don't agree with some of the things she said, and I'm going to take a moment to reply to that. Thank you. Now, she was questioned about double dipping, and that is the whole crux of the first issue. She says that she got a discount, a huge discount, because she had to clean up the mess, get insurance, and blah, blah, blah. She also said she got a huge discount because the landlord was getting paid from somebody else. But what the legislation says, she has to declare the fair market value. So, the discount that she got for cleaning it up was a campaign contribution from the landlord. The labor she did, the money that she saved, is a campaign expense at fair market value. And she said the rent was subsidized by the other tenant. She admitted it herself. There is no way that fair market value is, under the circumstances that she's confirmed, is $375. She received additional benefits, and those are questions that need to be determined in an audit. Now, with respect to number 2, talked about the signs. Carolyn, where are your returns or materials of the wording gates that were on top of those signs? Because I haven't seen the invoice for that.
There wasn't, we cut them off the bottom of the signs.
What sign?
Go to the,
So look at the picture.
So if you cut them at the bottom of the old signs that you didn't put up,
Right.
that's the value of those is a
No.
campaign expense.
We cut them off the signs we did put up. I told you we put up 150 that were in the garage. We cut those bottoms off. Each of them makes 2 whirly gigs.
Okay.
They were up for a couple
So
of
next
years.
one.
Did you like them?
They're wonderful,
Okay.
especially late at night. Thank you. Okay, that's an explanation of the wording. Thank you. Now, third, with respect to the signs, and again, this is objective, but hey, it's my opinion. You said that there was, Carolyn said that there was signs in the two name guys in the south. I mean, I live on Ceremonial, and Ceremonial was plastered. Bristol was plastered. So, with all due respects, I take issue with the fact that of the number of signs. But again, that's not something that I can prove definitively.
But I can.
Now, she gave evidence that there was damages to the building and the conditions were not good, and that she cleaned it up and everything else. And as I've said, any work that was done to improve it was a benefit, a monetary benefit, either to the landlord or to the other tenant who was giving her a discount. But the value is what we're talking about here, not the price she paid. And that's very important. It doesn't matter what she paid. What matters is the fair market value. In addition, she received a contribution from Enbridge for the lights. The value of the lights they put in, even though they're free, every expense in a campaign, everything has to be included. So if you're working to include the price of the lights in your campaign office as a benefit to the landlord, to you, you should have refused the lights. And I say in closing that it's clear that there's enough issues here that it's worth doing the compliance audit to find out if, in fact, she overspent. Because if she overspent, that is the most serious offense of all. And I believe that I've demonstrated errors in the returns with respect to the stakes. No, you can't sit here and say I had 1,000 stakes in my garage. You have a return that says you had 477 stakes from previous elections. Previous elections. That's what you declared you had. All of a sudden you start another campaign, you miraculously have 700 signs. There are enough errors in this thing, there's enough questions in this thing, that I, with all due respect to this committee, suggest you have no alternative but to comply, to call for a vote for a compliance audit, and it would be a dereliction of your duty to do, not to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jack Siegel, Bonnie Crombie's lawyer, said the signs were worthless.
Privilege. I take exception to that last statement made by the applicant, sir, as the committee's very alleged dereliction, potential dereliction of duty. I take offense at that statement.
No offense intended, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Madam Parrish?
Yes, thank you.
You can summarize in 5 to 6 minutes.
I don't even need 5 minutes. Carolyn Parrish values to the office is a man asked me to do certain things to use the space. He set the price. I felt by the time I added everything in that I needed, and this $1,590.70 seems to bother you. The Enbridge was folded in there, and there were stamps and envelopes in there. So that's one of the difficulties with these financial statements, is they don't break things down for you. You can't tell what each of those categories has in it. I think it'd be a really good recommendation from this committee to the Minister of Municipal Affairs to say, because we all have to keep all our receipts, all our bank statements, we have to keep it for 4 years, particularly if you win. We can all leave those with the city clerk, and Mr. Vezina can go in and look through it to his heart's content. And then you can find out right to the penny what everything was being spent on. I have been in 9 campaigns, and if you think these are tough financial rules, the federal ones are crazy. I have never filed an improper return. I have never lied. I have never made a mistake, except for not filling my name in on those 2 pieces. I do have a lot of stakes in my garage because I have friends in high places, and there's different campaigns going on all the time, and my husband has built these insane shelves. Everybody always knows they can put stuff in there because we never put our cars in the garage. So the stakes are legitimate, the signs are legitimate. In my opinion, the rent was extremely reasonable. If it had turned out it was going to cost me more than $1,700, I wouldn't have rented it. So I was willing to pay $1,700. They were willing to accept the equivalent value of $1,700. And as far as Enbridge is concerned, they were running around, or EnerSource, they were putting lights up in all the plazas so that they could get people to save energy. We called the landlord, do you want the free lights? He said, sure. They put them up in the whole plaza. So I don't think I owed anybody anything for those lights. In fact, we probably saved people some money. But I filed these returns. If I am unfortunate enough that you decide to call an audit, I'd be happy to show you all the rest of the books. There really is nothing here that's mysterious.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now the committee will consider to convene in camera to discuss with our solicitor. Will the member of the committee make a motion to move in camera? Somebody will second. Whereas the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, the Act requires a resolution to be passed prior to closing part of the meeting to the public. And whereas the Act required that the resolution state the act of holding of a closed meeting and the general nature of the matter to be considered a closed meeting. Now therefore, be it resolved that the portion of the election campaign finance committee meeting held on March 6, 2012 shall be closed to the public to deal with the following matters. Pursuant to Municipal Act subsection 239(2), paragraph F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. We will reconvene. It's about 8, almost close to 8:20. We will take about 20 minutes. If we need more time, Laura will come out.
Watch this guy make a beeline for the door to take a
So
smoke.
please stay outside our hall here, and we'll thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jane.
There we go.
Mr. Chairman, before you start, may I raise a question on a point of order? Commissioner Chung, when he questioned me, talked about a legal precedent involving where rent is paid. That's the value that's used in the case we talked about. I checked with someone during the break.
Chairman, a point of order, sir. The hearing has been
We're reconvening back.
and discussed.
I thought you wanted to ask a question.
And
I have a question on
I
point
don't
of order.
think we can reopen this hearing again.
We already reconvened back, and I'm going to call the meeting back in order. Okay. The committee will now reconvene. Will a member please bring forward a motion to grant or reject the application? So, motion, and a second? So, all in favor? The Election Campaign Finance Committee has considered the application for the compliance audit submitted by Mr. Greg Vezina. Following examination of this application, the committee has decided to reject the application for the following reasons. As there is no compelling and credible information which raises a reasonable probability of breach of Municipal Election Act. The committee will take no further action with regard to this application. On behalf of the member of the Election Campaign Finance Committee, I wish to thank the respected applicant and the respondent for your participation. Each of you will receive a formal notice of committee decision by email. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman.
much.